Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is John with Aperture Digital, and today we're going to be looking at w3.org and learning about their tabs with automatic activation. w3.org is a place where you can learn about web accessibility, and today we're going to learn about tabs. Before we get started, I'm not a lawyer and I'm not an accessibility expert, but what we're going to do today is take their automatic tab example here and rebuild it in bricks. So first off, let's look at their example here. When you click on the tab, it will automatically change the tab content. If you're using your keyboard, you can use the left and right arrows and the home key and the in key to move about the tab component here. If you want to focus on the tab content, hit the tab key and it will focus on the tab content. Shift and tab will bring you back up to the tab buttons where you can continue your navigation. So the home key and the in key will jump you to the first and last tab, and again the arrows will move about the tab buttons here. So I think you should come and read through a lot of this page here to learn about the accessibility features and the keyboard support and all of the different roles, properties, and attributes that go along with an accessible tabs component like this. Down towards the bottom of the page, you'll see the HTML source code, which we are going to reference, as well as some of the CSS, not much, and the JavaScript. So you can click on the JavaScript and see the code, and we're going to come back to this later. And you can also see the CSS. So the first thing I'm going to do is take all of this HTML and drop it into VS Code. If you don't have a code editor, VS Code is free, and I highly recommend using it. So what I've got here is a brand new HTML document, and I'm going to paste this HTML in here and then start minimizing some of these divs down here so we can see the overall structure. And what we're going to do is go item by item here, rebuilding this in bricks. We're going to be adding classes and IDs, and most importantly, the attributes. So we're going to take it slow, because if we don't get it exactly right, the JavaScript is not going to work, and you're not going to have the keyboard controls that go along with the JavaScript. So first things first, let's just look it over. There's an H3 here that we are not going to use, so I'm going to delete that. And now we've just got an outer div that's wrapping everything. We've got a div that's wrapping the individual tab buttons, and then we have 4 tab buttons along with 4 divs for the tab content. So an outer div for everything, a div wrapper for the buttons, and then 4 divs for the tab content. Let's go back and look at our example. So we have the entire div over everything, a div wrapping the buttons, 1, 2, 3, 4 buttons, and then 4 pieces of tab content here. All right, let's get started and jump into bricks and build this thing out. I'm really excited. I think this is a lot of fun, and you can really see the power of bricks, but we got to take our time and get everything exactly right. Let's get going. Okay, we're in Bricks Builder now, and I've got a new blank page, and the first thing we're going to do is add a section. The section is the only wrapper here that is not going to reference the HTML structure. I'm going to use the section just so we can have a little bit of padding. So when we look at our HTML structure here, the first thing we're going to do is create that div, which is going to be this container. This container will output as a div on the front end, and that's going to be the entire tab wrapper. So this we'll call tab wrapper. Next, we need to look and see if there's an ID, classes, or attributes, and all I see is one class called tabs. So we're going to take that and add that to our tab wrapper here. So add that class and hit enter, and we're going to save that. And the first part is done. So I'm going to walk through each one of these elements here and add everything from the classes, IDs, on down to the attributes one by one. So the next piece here is going to be the button wrapper. So I'm going to go back and nest that underneath here because this is going to wrap everything. And I'm going to use a block element. And this is going to be our tab button wrapper. And let's check it out and see what it has to offer. So we've got an attribute called role, an aria labeled by attribute, and a class. So let's start with the class, and it's called automatic, and it has to be automatic because the JavaScript is going to reference it. So just stick with the example on everything, and we can change it later, but for now let's just keep it exactly like we see it. So add that class automatic to your tab button wrapper. Next we'll go into style and come down to our attributes, and we've got our role equals tab list. So I'm going to copy tab list and type in role. So the first name is going to be role, and the value is going to be tab list. The next attribute is going to be aria labeled by and tab list 1. And these are accessibility pieces here that help screen readers call out different landmarks on the page. So we've got our class, our attributes, and that is it for the button wrapper. Let's double check one more time and make sure there isn't an ID, and there is not. So the next item underneath our tab button wrapper will be 4 buttons. And what I will tell you is the first button is different than all the other buttons. We have an aria selected true on the first button, and on the second button we have aria selected false, and then also our aria controls, which is what is going to be mapping our buttons to our content. I won't get into too much detail there. Just know it has to be exactly right. So each one of those is different. So we're just going to walk through each one really slowly. And we're also going to use another block here. So let's add a block underneath our tab button wrapper and start adding our classes, IDs, and attributes. So first off is the class, and there isn't one. So I am going to add one just for my own styling, but there is no class, so you don't need one to work, to make this work. But I'm going to add one anyways in case we want to style it. Let's see, so this is going to be tab button. And the ID is tab-1. So to edit the ID in bricks, you can clear out your class and then hit the pencil and it will say rename element ID. We're going to paste that in tab-1, hit enter, and now you have a new ID called tab-1. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 attributes here: type button and role tab. I think I can remember that. So type button and role tab. Next is aria selected true, because when the page initializes, we want this first one to be selected and the active one, because that's what you would see when you load the page. The first tab and first tab content is displayed. Aria selected is true. And aria controls is going to be tab panel 1. So this button will map to this div down here called tab panel 1. And that's kind of how the JavaScript is linking everything together. Tab panel -1. Let's make sure I spelled that right. Tab panel -1. Yep. Last thing I'm going to do is change the HTML tag. So I'm going to go to content, HTML tag, and change that to custom. And this is going to be a button. And save that. So the first button is complete. So we have two choices here. We can duplicate these and change them, or manually do it one by one. It'll be faster if we duplicate them, but we have to get everything right. So I'm going to duplicate this. So I already have my tab button here, class, and it does not copy the ID. So I need to just go ahead and add that tab-2 ID to it. And we'll go back and double check that, tab-2. Type is button, role is tab, aria selected is false. So back over to our attributes, type is there, role is there. Aria selected needs to be false because this one is hidden. So it is not selected. And then our tab panel 2 for our aria controls. And you'll see that we're just going to bump everything up one. And that is it. So let's duplicate that and do it real quick again. So our class is there. Our ID is going to be tab-3. And I don't think we have to change the aria selected because it's already false. The only thing we have to change is tab panel 3, and that's it. So once you get going, it's pretty quick to build this whole structure out. Let's do the last one. This ID is going to be tab-4. Aria controls tab panel-4. Let's click save. Let's double check everything. We've got our custom HTML tag button on all of these. This one will have an aria selected true, tab panel 1, aria selected false, tab panel 2, the ID is tab 2, tab 3, aria selected false, aria controls tab panel 3, and the fourth one. Looking good. Okay, so that's it for the buttons. Let's go back and add this tab button 1. Button 3. Finally, button 4 so that we can really see what's going on here in the structure. All right, next. Let's close our buttons down. You'll see this span right here. And this is going to be for what is going to be our button label. So we're going to ignore that because I'm going to drop a text element underneath here. And in fact, let's just go ahead and do that. And we can even use the custom span class if you want. So let's look at that real quick and show you why they have this span underneath this button. So before we move to our tab panels, let's do this really quick. We're going to nest a text element called basic text, and this is going to be tab number 1, tab 1, and we can go and give it that span if we want. And now we have recreated this. If we wanted to add the class of focus on there, we could, to maybe change the focus styles. We'll see if we need to do that. I'm not going to do that right now because that's getting really down in the weeds and we might not need to do that. So I'm going to duplicate that 4 times and move those underneath my tab buttons. All right, tab 2, tab 3, and tab 4. So let's do a little bit of styling so these start to look better. So let's close down our tab buttons. And let's go to our tab button wrapper where we have a class of automatic, and we can style automatic however we want to. So let's click on that and change this to a flex row. All right, check that out. I'm using automatic CSS on this local install here, so I'm going to add some row gap and column gap. Let's do a medium gap on the row and a medium gap on the column. We probably don't need row gap, but what this is going to do is add this gap variable to my class here. And since I have that class available, I can add different styles to it. So we want to style the class and not the ID, and that gives us our nice little gap there. If we wanted to style our buttons, we could, but I'm not going to do that now. We want to build this thing out and get our JavaScript running. But that's good enough. It's looking better. And again, all I did was came to our tab button wrapper and changed the flex direction to row. All right, let's go back to VS Code and see what the next bit is. And that is going to be our tab panel. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 divs. And that is being wrapped by our outer tab wrapper. So we don't want to nest it underneath the buttons. We want to nest it underneath our tab wrapper. So I'm going to click there and add a block. And this structure is important. It's not going to work right if you don't get the structure right. So now we've got our tab wrapper with our buttons, and now our first tab content wrapper here. So this is going to be tab content number 1. And save that. And we're going to just do the same routine. Notice this has an ID of tab panel 1 and some attributes here. And there's no class, so we're going to add our own class. But the only things required are these 4 items here. So let's start with the ID. I'm going to copy that. Come over here, click the pencil, paste, and hit enter. And notice I didn't put the hash mark in front. Just type the text and hit enter, and Bricks will add the hash for you. Next is going to be our attribute. So our role is tab panel, and our tab index is 0. Role, tab panel, and tab index is 0. And tab index says whether something can be focusable or not. So if you want it to be focusable by the keyboard, you need a tab index of 0. If you don't want it to be focusable, meaning the keyboard won't ever tab to it, then this would be a -1. But we want this to be focusable, so tab index is equal to 0. Click save, and then let's look at our other aria labeled by tab 1. So let's copy that. Tab-1. One more time, let's check it out and see if we're missing anything here. So this is our tab panel. Role, tab panel, tab index is 0, aria labeled by tab 1. And it looks pretty good to me. Let's go ahead and add that class. And this will be tab underscore content wrapper. So this is tab content wrapper. Okay, so let's duplicate that one time. Tab content number 2 and go see what we need to change. First thing is going to be the ID. This is going to be tab panel 2. And then our attributes are going to be the same except for the aria labeled by. So let's close that one down, open this one. Role is the same, tab index is the same. Aria labeled by is tab 2. And if you'll notice, there is a class called isHidden, and this is really important. So the first one didn't have the isHidden class, but all the rest of them do. And isHidden is going to be display none, so that when the page loads, all the tab contents are hidden, and then the JavaScript will remove that class so you can show it as you tab through and use your keyboard controls. So that's the only really thing that you need to know, is that this first one, we added our styling, but we're going to add that to the rest of them too. But the next 3 tab content blocks here are going to have the isHidden class. Let me make sure I spelled that right. Is-hidden. And add that, and then isHidden is going to be display none, and I know that because I've already looked this up. But if you go back to w3.org and head over to the CSS, Control F is -hidden, down at the bottom, you can see they're doing some really fancy CSS where we're targeting the attribute and the class, but we're not going to do that. We don't need to do that. All we need is the isHidden class and display is none. So if you really want to learn some cool ways to target different elements with attributes, this is how you can do that. You can go and study this. It's really cool. All we need is isHidden and display none. So let's go to isHidden class, make sure it's active, go back to content and do display none, and it will go away. All right, let's double check our attributes one more time. ARIA labeled by, you see I missed this one, tab 1. This needs to be tab 2. So we have to be really, really careful. Every time I build these things out, I usually miss one of these and then the functionality doesn't work right. So let's copy that. This is going to be tab content number 3. Our ID is going to be tab panel 3. And our ARIA labeled by is going to be tab-3. That's it. Everything else is good to go. Let's copy one more time. Tab content 4. Go grab our ID of tab panel-4. Again, these IDs have to be spelled exactly right. Tab panel 4, and our ARIA labeled by is tab-4. And that is the structure. Next, let's add some tab content. So let's go to the first tab here and add a something cool. How about, I don't know, price box? Is that price table? Nope, that's too much. Let's try something a little simpler. Maybe an icon box. Let's do an icon box. Okay. So this first one, we're going to change the icon box content to say tab number 1, tab content number 1, and hit save. And then let's duplicate that 3 times and start bringing that down inside our tab content wrappers. So now we have some content inside our tabs, and I want to go and change it so that we can see that it's clearly different. So I'm going to add tab content 2, change the icon to something else like Twitter. On this next one, let's change it to something LinkedIn. Change the content to say tab content number 3. And then let's do this last one, call this tab content 4, and change its icon to something like this Android guy here. So if we go to our tab content wrapper, we have the isHidden class. And if we want to just see what we've done, just remove display none. All of them will pop up. So that looks good to me. I mean, maybe we could style it up a little bit, but I think it's fine for now. So let's go back to our tab content wrapper, our isHidden class, and display none, and hit save. Next, we need to add a code block and bring in the JavaScript. Let's go grab our code block element, and I like to drag mine to the very top underneath the section, and this is going to be tab.js. And you'll notice I have this execute code here, and you can toggle it on or off. If you toggle it on, it will execute the code here. If you do not see that toggle, do this. Go back to the Bricks dashboard and go to settings, and then go to builder access, and then code execution, and select your role. I'm an admin, so I am going to turn it on, and that allows us to execute the code blocks inside the builder. So if you don't see this execute code, that's what's going on. Let's delete all of that and then add a script tag by saying open caret script close, and then we're going to close the script tag just like so, and we're going to put our code inside the script tags because that's how Bricks likes it. So let's go back to w3.org and grab the JS, which is at the bottom of the page. Towards the bottom here, JavaScript, which is tabs automatic.js. Let's copy that whole thing and go drop it into in between our script tags. So you should see all of this, and then when you hit execute code, it should work. I have been flying through this. I think it's gonna work. Let's jump over to the front end and see what happens. So we'll know pretty quickly when we look at our console and see if we have any errors. So let's go to preview mode and view on front end. I'm going to right click in the page somewhere and bring up our inspect tool. Go over to console and see if we have any errors, and we do not. So that's a really good sign that I think it's going to work. So the first thing I'm going to do is click up here in the URL bar and then hit the tab, and it'll start tabbing through. And then you'll see the skip to main content, and this is added by Bricks as an accessibility item. So if you've never seen that, it's out of the box with Bricks. And I am using automatic CSS, so we have some styling going around showing things that are currently in focus. And then we need to hit tab again to bring our focus over to our tabs. All right, so now if we use our arrow keys, which I'm going to do here, you should start seeing it cycle through our tab content. Also, we need to test the home and the end button. So if I hit end, it should go to tab 4. Yes. If I hit home, it should go to tab 1. Yes. If I hit tab, it should go down to the tab content. If I hit shift and tab, it should go back up. Boom. It's beautiful. And that's how you bring in a w3.org accessibility component into Bricks Builder. It's not that hard. You can make this as wild as you want. So I came over here quickly to my home page, and I wanted to show you basically the same thing I built with Oxygen Builder. I know I love Oxygen, but I'm moving forward with Bricks on all my new agency builds, and I need to convert my website over to Bricks because it's I just think it's a better experience. So I'll show you the tabs that I've implemented here. We'll let the little Lottie file run because everybody loves Lotties, and we'll go check out the tabs. So this is my tab section to show the different type of work that I do. And when you start tabbing through it, you'll see it works the same way. I've added an image and some text, but it works the same way, and this would be a good use case for how you could use tabs, showing what you have to offer, your different web services. So this is an example of what it looks like, a little bit nicer than what I've built out in Bricks so far. So we could head over to Bricks and build this out some more if we want, but really we're pretty much done at this point implementing an accessible tab. And really it's not all that complicated. What if we wanted to add another tab button? What would we need to do? So first we need to come over to our tab button and hit duplicate. And we probably need to check the JavaScript to see, but I don't think so. And then we need to add our IDs. So this would be tab -5. I don't know if this is actually going to work. I'd have to go check out the JavaScript. I think it should. And then go and adjust all of our attributes. Let's see, back on our button. And our ARIA controls will be tab panel 5. So if you remember, everything is kind of synced up from your tab button down to your tab panel down here. So then we'd need to also duplicate the last tab content. We'll change that to tab content 5 and change this to tab button 5. So click back on the new tab content, and we need to add an ID of tab panel -5. So let's add that ID, tab panel -5, and then go check out our ARIA labeled by and change that to tab 5. Let's change our icon box and say content tab number 5 and change our icon to something else and see if it works. A little, I don't know, is that a slinky? A printer? I don't know what that is. I'm gonna call it a slinky. Stack Overflow. Oh yeah, duh. All right, let's see if this works. Boom, it's beautiful. So that's all you have to do. So the JavaScript out of the box will allow you to add more tabs. All you have to do is make sure that you add your ID, go over to your attributes, and then link them up, because the ARIA labeled by is what's really controlling it in the JavaScript. So tab 5 is controlling the tab content. And then over on your button, add that ID and then change the ARIA controls to tab panel -5. So let's go look real quick in the DOM and see what's happening. So we've got tab content there. Let me see if I can drop this down below here. Let's get rid of that and see what's going on. So when this one is active, tab content 1 is active. When I move over with my right arrow key, you'll notice over here in the HTML in the DOM that it will change things. And the cool part is for this button 2, now it says ARIA selected is true and the one before it is false. So let's just focus on these two right here. These are the accessibility controls and items for screen readers that would say like this tab button is the active button. So if we go back, you know, the JavaScript will change that ARIA attribute, and you can see it as we cycle through them. And then the isHidden class is being added or removed depending on which piece of content we want to show. So the one that's not hidden, the isHidden class is removed. So if we go to tab button 2, tab panel 2 is going to have the isHidden class removed. Boom, JavaScript. That's what it's for. So I hope you're learning a lot. I really turn into a nerd when I get into the code. I love to look at this and dissect it, and you can see how powerful it is. Let's say you wanted to use different class names. Can you or not? So I said earlier that this class called automatic, which was in our HTML from w3.org. This is in the JavaScript, so I'll show you where you can change that. So if we wanted to do like a BIM naming convention, let's call this one, instead of tabs, just tab. And then this one would be, instead of automatic, it would be tab __ button wrapper. And now since we're going to change this, we got to go change this in the JavaScript. So let's do that first. I hit enter. So now we have this BIM naming convention where we've got tab as the parent block, and then our first element, this is the button wrapper. And let's go jump over to our JavaScript. I know this is a lot of jumping around, so feel free to drop some questions in the comments if you have them. And then let's try to go down and find the class automatic. I wonder if it will find it. I don't think so. Let me see if I can find it real quick. I think it's at the very, very bottom. Yep. So at the very bottom of the JavaScript, it's doing a query selector all for the attribute role tab list dot automatic, which is just the button. So all this is going to do is go gather up all the buttons. Let's store those as variables. So we just need to replace that with our new class. So all I did, let me Control Z, is I changed automatic, deleted it, and then added my new class, which is tab underscore underscore button wrapper. Just like that. So that's the first thing you need to change. And then the next thing is the isHidden class. And you know, that one we don't really need to change because it's like a modifier. But if we wanted to, this is what we would do. So we'd have over here under our tab content and our isHidden, we would have tab content wrapper. And I'm going to copy this name. And this is getting quite complex, but you'll see what I'm doing. And instead of isHidden, I'm going to rename this one to tab content wrapper -- hidden. And this double dash says that this is like a modifier of the standard tab content wrapper, and just change that, and then Bricks will change it on all of them. So this is our tab content wrapper and then our isHidden class here. So we've changed it, and I didn't change it in the JavaScript, and what's going to happen is this is going to break because it's looking for that class. So now nothing's happening. I can still tab and cycle through, but the content is not changing because I changed that class name. So let's jump back over to the JavaScript, and it's around line 50. I can't really Control F inside the builder right now. So it's around line 50, and it's called isHidden. And I'm just going to drop that to tab content wrapper -- hidden. Just grab that whole string there and go drop that here as well. It's in those two spots, and that's the only two spots. You can go double check in VS Code. That would make it easier. But that's it. Save it. Let's jump back over to the front end and refresh, and now it's working again. So that's it. Change the automatic class to whatever you want to call it. Go to the very bottom of the JavaScript and change it there, and then inside around line 50 and then around line 60, you'll see the isHidden class here, and this is what the JavaScript's doing. It's just adding and removing that isHidden class depending on which tab you're focused on, and that is it. So one last time I wanted to go through the most important pieces, and that's getting the classes named right on your different parts to this component, your different elements, and getting the IDs named correctly, and then finally getting the attributes named correctly. So the way that I like to go through HTML is with something like Visual Studio Code, and looking at the different attributes, going line by line. It's not that many. We did this whole video in like 30 minutes, and trying to rebuild it this way and then bring that over into Bricks. This isn't a very complex structure here, but what you found is you have a fully functioning tabs component that you can export, save as a template, move it around, and it's accessible according to this document here. So I hope you found this tutorial useful. I would appreciate it if you liked and subscribed to this channel. It gives me a lot of inspiration when I see people interacting and talking with me. I like to learn with you all together. So reach out to me on Facebook, John Aperture, or in the comments here, and then I will post the links to this W3 website down in the comments as well. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out and let me know what you think about this tutorial. Have a great rest of your day.